With the headlines, I'm Staff Sergeant Mike Hutchinson. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is warning that a popular workout supplement, Oxy Elite Pro, has been linked to acute hepatitis. The Office of the Air Force Surgeon General is urging airmen to stop using the product until the FDA has completed its investigation. At Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama, civil engineers are looking at ways to use cutting-edge technology to cut energy costs. Through a system of climate control upgrades and improved construction processes, the base is planning to save the Air Force millions of dollars over the next decade. And finally, Airmen in PACAF are looking back on a busy year that saw major humanitarian relief efforts and decisive combat employment. For more Air Force news, visit AFA. That's it for the headlines. I'm Staff Sergeant Mike Hutchinson.
All right, now we did miss a couple of weeks, so we'll go back into this week's here. We'll be finished up. We all caught up.
With the headlines, I'm Staff Sergeant. The government shutdown has ended, but according to Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, it's going to take a while for the effects to fade. The short-term continuing resolution passed last week gives Congress the chance to craft a balanced, long-term spending bill. And if you're one of the hundreds of airmen who were sent home from professional military education courses during the shutdown, the Air Force is giving you 3 options to still receive credit, either through distance learning, retaking the full in-residence course, or continuing the course from the point at which you were sent home. And finally, there have been some changes to the Air Force's physical training assessment to include additions to the body composition component, delegation of appeal authority, and changes to the walk test. You can find out all the details by visiting AFLAN. That does it for the headlines. I'm Staff Sergeant Nicholas Curtis.
Love y'all popping in there.
This week on today's airport,
So would you assume
F6.
Colonel Chancellor or Captain Moffitt with the PT assessment alteration there that would affect ROTC as well? I don't know if you caught that.
No, it doesn't right now. That's just for if you, on active duty, if you actually fail the body fat composition, it'll go to that. And then it's a different table, but it did significantly lower the max weights. But right now, it doesn't affect ROTC.
Thanks, sir. All right, so I know many of you all, 200 specifically and above, did we recall watching a video featuring General Mark Welsh. Today we'll watch another one. This is actually a pretty recent one. It's not going to be the one from the Air Force Academy. So we'll give you a recall of what we've already seen there. So it's about 55 minutes long. Stay awake, but it didn't last a little bit, so you can get a better view of the screen there. But I've seen it a couple times. He's discussing the state of the Air Force and a few other things in regards to that morale and so on and so forth. Take no notes. If at all you're proactive, then take physical notes as well. So that being said, we'll go ahead and get started here.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have this particular session on today, one I think you're all looking for our 20th Chief of Staff of the Air Force School and a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff will talk to us about the state of the Air Force. General Welsh served prior to assuming this position as the commander of USAFE and the commander of the Deployment Command in Europe. He's a command pilot with 3,400 hours. So questions and answers will please fill out the forms and we'll see where that goes, but I can assure you that even if we don't get time, the Chief will get those questions. The answers, we'll see. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General Welsh.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, please. Please sit down. Or clap a little more, your choice. Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome. I've got to tell you, this is a little surreal. Really surreal. I had to put slides up because I was really nervous about looking over there and seeing all of this and all of that. That would have been more than I could take, I think. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Mr. Secretary Gale, thank you for being here. I'm going to come back to Betty because I got a great picture I want to show you of her. But she's a babe and she's up here in the front row. Hold that thought. I'll come back to it. I love the theme of this conference. Airmen, Air Power, and America's Air Force. It's a great theme. It's a great topic to discuss. And this is a great Air Force, folks. And I'm excited about talking to you and giving you a few of my thoughts about it. First of all, this picture here is one you can't see from the back, but that's my name on the side of the cockpit. And I carry this around with me just to remind myself that at one point in time I was cool. Now I'm just dummy. But I can remember those days. Next slide, please. This would be a panic moment. Before we go any farther, I have to say thank you to somebody. General Laurie Shores, in the transition from his tenure as chief to the beginning of mine as chief, was absolutely incredible. I don't think Chief Shores is here today, but I got the chance to say thank you, but I didn't get the chance to say it publicly. He went so far above and beyond what could be expected that it was just unbelievable. And I wanted to make sure that you knew that. And I wanted to let you know what a class act he was and everything he did in this transition. From inviting a bunch of the former air chiefs to his house to talk to me about the job, preparing me on the issues that he felt he didn't quite get to, or felt that he didn't quite accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. I noticed in the discussion he failed to mention all the things that he did do, which didn't surprise me, but there were many of those. He just did an unbelievable job. And Chief, wherever you are, thank you so very much for the way you treated me and Betty and the way Susan did as we came into this job. The great news for us is that's not a wave goodbye, because General Schwartz will be serving on the board of AFA and for the future, so we're really excited about having him still around to kind of watch my back and kick me in the butt when I need it. Next slide, please. There's one other person, actually there's one other couple I'd like to say something about here this morning, because I'm going to officially announce right now that Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Jim Roy will retire on 31st of January of 2013. Those of you who have not had a chance to work, even for a brief period of time, closely with Chief Roy and Paula, just simply don't know what you're missing. This guy is an unbelievable professional. He has dedicated himself completely to the last 3 years in this job. And he's got a partner in Miss Paula who just raises his game every single day. She is a phenomenal member of ours. She is connected in every possible way. Everywhere they go, the enlisted force, the families, and pretty quickly, whether they want to or not, the officer force and families of that location are hugging Miss Paula and talking to Chief Roy about what's best for our Air Force and for their airmen. You guys have been such a blessing to our Air Force. Thank you for what you brought to the job. Thank you for what you brought to the nation, and all of our best wishes as you move on to great success and happiness in the future. Betty and I are really going to miss you. Congratulations. Next slide, please. Now that is a good looking uniform. Just in case you missed it before. I was a little upset last night at the dinner though, because I noticed that the honor guard and the band and even the singing sergeants have copied it now. You guys might not have seen the entertainment channel's E-Fashion Police Show. For those of you who don't watch it, I'm not making this up. Their lead fashion consultant actually got this photo sent to him on a blog and replied in print with his opinion on the uniforms. It was a picture of Chief Roy and Chief Schwartz and I standing together at the transition ceremony. And his words words were, and I'll try and quote them exactly, is a uniform that conveys a sense of power. It's a very masculine uniform. It can only be worn by men in excellent physical shape. These guys look outstanding. I must say I agree wholeheartedly. Well, there's a secret I need to let out, though. You know, Chief Schwartz didn't come up with this idea on his own. This is actually a copy of the uniform that the former Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force wear at their little get-togethers down in Florida each year. You should ask them about that. Next slide, please. Airmen, air power, and America's Air Force. It is a great theme. So let's start where all things should start in our business. Let's talk about airmen. Like U.S. Army aeronaut Thaddeus Lowe, in September of 1961, raising himself 1,000 feet above the terrain just on the other side of the Potomac River, a couple miles from here, 1,000 feet in the air to look at Confederate lines in the vicinity of Falls Church, and then telegraphing their location back down to the ground on a wire he carried up with him so that Union artillery could fire into Confederate ranks. First time we've seen indirect fire in the United States military. It was successful, and so the Secretary of War ordered old Thaddeus to build a battery that they call the battery of 7 balloons. This is one of them, the Intrepid. This is the beginning of our heritage. Next slide. It continued. In World War I, the American public fell in love with aviation by watching the Lafayette Escadrille, reading their story, talking to the heroes as they came back to the States. That's the Escadrille in the big picture in the center. Those are their pets, whiskey and soda in the upper left, the 2 African lion cubs. That's a serious square pet. That's Raoul Wolfberry in the upper right. And of course, that's the Ace of Aces, Captain Eddie Rickenbacker in the bottom right. And all of a sudden, aviation was romantic. And fighter pilots were incredibly handsome and attractive. Next slide. And the heroes kept coming. Billy Mitchell, Jimmy Doolittle, General of the Air Force Hap Arnold, Curtis LeMay, and lots of others. Robin Owens, Robbie Reisner, John Jumper, George Miller, lots of others. Craig McKinley. Next slide. And they keep coming. In the audience today are a couple of members of the group I took this picture of. About a month ago, the Chief and Paul and Betty and I went to the mortuary of Dover. I'd been to distinguished transfer ceremonies, but I hadn't been to the mortuary itself. Read all about it in the paper, but I hadn't been there and met the airmen who were involved in that incredibly important work. And so I went to meet them, because I heard they were great. I had no idea how great they were. This is the dress and wrapping section. I believe that the NCOIC is here. Sergeant Worthy, are you in the audience? Would you come up here for a minute and join me? The responsibility of this section in the mortuary at Dover is to wrap remains that require it, and then to dress the bodies before they're shipped home to their families. This is the NCOIC. It's good to see you. Sergeant Worthy is from Dover, Delaware. She's an Air Force reservist. She's been in the reserves for 15 years. She's deployed 10 times to the Air Force Mortuary Office at Dover. 10 times. She has treated the remains of the fallen for the coal disaster, from OIF, from OEF, and from other mass fatalities during that time period. Their job is for the uniforms to be perfect before they leave, and for the remains, if they can't wear a uniform, to be perfectly wrapped, so that the family never has to deal with the aggravation of a problem with their son or daughter, or husband or brother coming home. Can you imagine doing this on 10 deployments? Let me tell you a very brief story about the mortuary I learned while I was there. Sergeant Worthy's section once had a set of remains they were wrapping that couldn't wear a uniform. When they wrap remains of that type, they wrap in multiple layers. In between each layer is identification, so if anything ever happens during the shipment, the body can always be identified no matter how many of the outer layers wear off. Typically dog tags are put inside each layer. As they finalized the preparation for this fallen hero to head home, right before the body shipped, they found out that he'd been promoted posthumously. Now, nobody ever unwraps the body. No one will see the remains after it leaves the mortuary. But Sergeant Worthy and the team unwrapped every layer, reprinted new dog tags, and reinserted them with a proper ring. Just because that's the way it should be. This is really, really difficult work, emotionally and technically. Nobody's better than the lady standing next to me. The artwork in the background on the wall, she's part of creating that too. This is one of the people she supervised, Senior Aaron Smith, in the fitness center that she helped design. This is just a special, special person and a remarkable senior NCO, and I wanted you to have the chance to say thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Next slide, please. You know, when we talk about airmen, it's not just who we are, it's what we value that makes us, hopefully, a little bit unique. Last year, at the Outstanding Airman of the Year banquet, I had the opportunity to see an airman who was in U.S. Air Forces in Europe at the time where I was stationed, Tech Sergeant Dustin Goodwin, you know, do the walk of honor down the aisle here as one of the 12 OAY winners. Sergeant Goodwin is a hero. He's a security forces member. He killed 3 militants in the wire at danger close range in a gunfight at Bagram to prevent him from penetrating the perimeter. He's a hero. And he was a spectacular NCO before that incident occurred. When he came to the award ceremony, he did what one of our winners did last night. Instead of asking a family member, a friend, somebody that they'd known in the past, he asked his supervisor, his flight chief, Captain Gil Weich. And Captain Weich is also here. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. He was in that same gunfight, directing traffic. When I asked Dustin why he invited Captain Weich, he said, I thought it would be important to have someone I admire. Someone I can emulate. Someone who leads airmen. Gil Weich won the Cy John Award for the United States Air Force last year. He deserved it. We value leadership in this business. Next slide. Senior Airman Christopher, are you here? Would you come up here too? There's lots of different kinds of leadership in our Air Force. One of the things that we also value greatly is pride. Hello, Chanel, good to see you again, sir. Senior Airman Christopher is married. He has 3 children. He's a welder. He's also an Air Force reservist. He also works at the mortuary at Dover. He's a manager at the Fisher House. His job is taking care of families who come to bring their loved ones home. We spent maybe 30 minutes in the Fisher House. And the entire time, I kept telling everybody around me, I want to take Senior Airman Christopher home with me. When we first went into the building, he gave us the tour of the facility. Every room was his favorite. He showed me the chairs where the families sit when they're most upset. He told me how he arranges the chairs so the light will hit them the right way and won't get in their eyes when they're talking to the doctors or the chaplain. He talked about how the families, when they first come into the building, will sit with the chaplain at the dining room table. And no more than 5 minutes before they come in the door, he puts juice and water on the table because he doesn't want them to have to worry about a dripping glass or a water spot on the table while they're hearing the news about the state of their loved one's body. When he showed us the actual rooms, there were 2 coasters on the top of the beds, the headboard there on the bed. And he said, there's nothing there right now because nobody's in the room, but just before they come in the door, I put a cold glass of water here because nobody should have to drink warm water when they're feeling the way they must be feeling. Everything we saw, everything we talked about was attention to detail. It was all focused on the family. It was all about making it easier for somebody else. And it was all because he is maybe the proudest guy I've met in the last 10 years. About wearing this uniform and about taking care of everyone and about doing the job right. Senior Airman Christopher, it was an honor to meet you. Thank you, buddy. You take care of yourself. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I told you she's a babe. This is my wife, Betty, who hates it when I do this. Betty needs me for absolutely nothing. She's smarter than I am. She's better looking than I am. Sadly, she can bench press more than I can. So I'm hoping the only reason she's hung around for these 35 years now is because maybe she actually likes me. Honey, thank you for everything. Thanks for being here today. You are going to love her. You really are. Next slide. We value family, by the way. Everybody's family. Every member of every family. It's important for us to remember that. Here's something else we value in our Air Force, and we always have. The Wright brothers are kind of the ultimate innovators in the aviation game, following a passion for manned flight through every possible hurdle. You know, the concept of over, not through was kind of born, I think, at their house. And it's a great concept. The question mark, 150-hour flight, 43 refuelings in 1929 through a 20-foot hose. Can you imagine? Bob Carlisle can't refuel now in an F-16. That's what I heard about. The bomber crews of World War II figuring out how to build formations that allowed planes with overlapping gun covers to defend each other because there weren't enough fighters with enough range to get to the target. Innovation, it's everywhere in our Air Force. The F-22 is an entire farm of innovation. It does things no airplane can do and no airplane will be able to do for a while. Part of the reason we have issues like the life support issues we're dealing with now is we've never had an airplane that could operate, maneuver, and pull G's above 50,000 feet. Not the way this thing can. We're into a new era, and young guys have to fly that airplane because it's going to be tough. But they love it. Don't believe what everybody's telling me about people not wanting to fly the F-22. There's nobody asking out at the moment that I've heard about. And of course, RPAs, unmanned aerial systems, unmanned air vehicles, whatever you want to call them. We're in the kind of the second stage here. We just passed the Wright Flyer stage of these things. And in the next 20, 30 years, these things are going to explode. Who knows what will happen next? But it's going to be exciting to watch, and our Air Force has to be in the lead because we'll know the best way to use it. Innovation is what we're all about. We always have been. Technology, great people, an important mission, and a focus that nobody else brings to the game. Next slide. By the way, this is Carl Spotts. You might not know this, but before they called him Tui, they called him the Riddler. He, of course, was the pilot of that 150-hour flight and air refueling in the question mark. That's his question mark jacket. I'm thinking about bringing these out as a new uniform item for the airport. Next slide. By the way, Carl Spotts was also a great innovator after that flight with the question mark. He became our first chief of staff in 1947 when the Air Force became a separate service, and he, with Curtis LeMay giving him a steady dose of advice and a great helping hand, kind of created our nuclear structure. Created the rules, the guidelines, the alert rates, and the status reports that are required to keep an ICBM and a bomber force on alert for all these years. Really remarkable leader. And that innovation continued. This is Master Sergeant Bart Decker. He's now retired. He was an Air Force combat controller. And in Operation Enduring Freedom, he was one of the first guys on the ground with an Army ODA team. Now, he's a new age kind of guy, and he's big into technology. And he's got a boatload of it on that horse. This is a remarkable picture. It's just a remarkable picture. And our JTACs and battlefield airmen today and our combat controllers are taking this to another level. All the lessons he learned, they've improved upon. With the help of our industrial partners, they've actually picked up new battery packs. They've got lighter weights, they've got better equipment, and they do a better job of saving lives and ruining the enemy's day every single day on the battlefield. Innovation's who we are, folks. We can't back away from this. We can't shy away from it. We have to engage our partners in industry on it. It's important that we communicate about it, and our airmen need to be thinking about it at every level of our Air Force. Next slide. Everybody in this room remembers where you were on this day. You probably remember exactly what you were doing when you first started. And you know, most Americans froze. They just sat almost dumbfounded, staring either in their house or their office or their computer, their TV, just frozen in disbelief at what was happening. But as always, a few Americans didn't. They went against every single speck of human instinct, and they went toward the carnage. They stepped into the chaos. The term Minuteman may be the earliest symbol of America. The Minuteman certainly was. And the Minuteman may still be the most well-known. But the Minuteman isn't always a man. Next slide. This is Major Heather Penny. Everybody in the Air National Guard knows this story, and a lot of us in active duty do not. Heather Penny was the first F-16 pilot in the F-16 unit up here at Andrews Air Force Base in the Maryland Guard. On 9/11, she and Colonel Mark Sasseville were actually given orders to bring down Flight 93 once it was determined that it was turning back and heading toward D.C. They didn't have any weapons on the airplane. So they sat on the end of the runway waiting for clearance to take off. The game plan was Sass would take the cockpit and she'd take the tail. And as she waited for takeoff clearance, she's thinking, okay, this is it, my last takeoff. Can you imagine? By the way, her father was a United Airlines pilot. He flew 757s. She knew he was flying that day, but she didn't know what flight number he was flying in. Can you imagine that? Where do we find them? We value courage in this business, and we should all value her. Next slide. You know, when World War I ended, we learned that information of reconnaissance could be helpful. We learned that you could actually do aerial bombardment. And so in the interwar period, we started improving the bombing techniques, looking for different ways of becoming more accurate, trying to get larger planes with larger payloads. We knew that pursuit and fighter combat would be an exciting thing to do, so that continued in the interwar period. World War II kind of cemented the idea that strategic bombardment was the way of the future. And we came out of World War II, and General Spots and SAC took over, and we built the world's greatest strategic bombing force. In Korea, we were reminded that we have to be able to support ground units, but it still kind of stayed in the background until Vietnam, where we realized that we really did need to think a little bit more about the joint work. We had to do a better job of supporting a ground component from the air, and our tactical proficiency on things like air superiority missions was not great in every platform. And we kind of got a wake-up call. And so our Air Force got serious about improving our tactical skills, and for the next 20 years we did that. And then we hit Desert Storm and demonstrated the best tactical Air Force the world's ever seen. And for the last 20 years, the enemy's been changing. And now here we sit at another one of those turning points. Who are we going to be when we grow up? time to think seriously about that, folks. It might not be who we were. And the pressures we have on us with the budget, the pressures we're going to have on us with sequestration, if it goes, the pressures we'll have with an increasing decrement of our budget, even if sequestration doesn't happen, are going to be significant. Okay, so it's time for an honest look in the mirror. I think we've been trying to do that. I think most of you had a role in it, but let's not close our eyes and clamp our minds shut yet. I don't think the thinking's done. Next slide. This is a good friend of mine. He's an Army 2 Sergeant, Jim Boozer. He's the Deputy Commander of U.S. Army in Europe right now. Jim Boozer's a combat veteran. He's commanded at multiple levels in combat in the Army, and he's just a great American. I asked Jim to come talk to our USAFE wing and squad, or our USAFE NAF and wing commanders while I was over there, and give us his view of the Air Force, just because I thought it would be interesting. One of the things he said right at the beginning of his presentation was kind of startling. He said, you know, I've been in the Army a long time now, and I've commanded, I think, 8 times. And I've been in combat, I think, as a commander, I think 4 times, he said. And he said, every time I'm in the field as a commander, I worry about everything. I worry about the ammunition storage points, I worry about my resupply routes, I worry about my perimeter defense, I worry about how I'm going to move things from here to there, I worry about the enemy, the threat picture, the tactics, I worry about collecting intelligence, I worry about everything. But not once in my career have I ever worried about anything up there. That's a quote. Think about that for a minute. That's a remarkable quote. He has no idea how it happens either, by the way. He'll freely tell you that. He just doesn't worry about it because it's never a problem. You should be patting yourself on the back right now. That is an incredible testimony. It's also a little worrisome because he doesn't know how it happens. He has no idea what goes into it. He doesn't know the resources required. He doesn't understand how many people are operating to make sure he doesn't have to worry about what's up there. I believe my job, our job, is to tell him. Next slide. When I came back to this job, I started talking to people in the air staff about what's going on, because I've been away from it, and I hadn't been in the middle of the discussions and the planning. I was concerned because I've kind of lost touch with the vernacular a little bit of the building, and that scared me. It was okay though, because as I got all the briefings, it all started to become clear. Slide please. We've got all these things, and there's more of them. They keep coming in. Okay, stop. It could have hurt in about another 3 seconds. I'm worried about this. I'm confused. And I just need you to know it. I'm confused because I don't understand what all the terminology means. I'm not understanding the stories when I hear it. The secretary is just a phenomenal teacher on the program side. On the ops side, on the mission side, I'm not connected anymore because we're changing everything. Our doctrinal terms are changing. What we're calling missions is changing. You guys who grew up flying CAS missions or interdiction missions, go try and see how many subderivatives there are of those things now. XCAS, XRCAS, INT, XID, and you can go and go and go and go. And we do it for good reasons. We do it because they're well-intentioned, but I'm telling you, everybody doesn't understand what we're doing. And we're doing it not just on the operational and doctrinal side, we're doing it on the money side, we're doing it on the planning side, we're doing it in lots of ways. I was scared to death my first couple of weeks because I thought it was just me. And then Larry Spencer came back from a money briefing and said, I have no idea what they just told me. And if a professional accountant doesn't understand it, I'm now nervous. And it's not because everybody's not doing great stuff, folks. Everybody is. My concern is we're not telling our own story well enough. We're trying, but something's not connecting. Next slide. When I get confused, I go back to the basics. In 1947, the Air Force became a separate service as a result of the National Security Act of that year. And there was an executive order for 9877, which was published, that gave the details of what our job was. Here's some of the stuff it says. Air superiority, strategic air forces, air reconnaissance, airlift, air support for ground forces, coordination of air defense. Sound familiar? They haven't changed. These are still the things that our combatant commanders expect us to deliver. We can call them whatever we want, but this is what they're looking for. They all understand these words. Let me talk about each of them. Next slide. This is the best picture of air superiority I've ever seen. Jim Boozer's in there somewhere sleeping. Can you imagine any enemy doing this with the United States Air Force in the air? It would never happen. Next slide. If we are not able to gain and maintain air superiority, which is not a given, and it's not easy, if we were unable to do that in future conflict, if we couldn't guarantee that we could, then everything about the way the United States Army and the United States Marine Corps fight on the ground would have to change. What they buy, how they train, maybe even who they recruit. This is a foundational element of the use of air power and of joint warfighting. Period. We need to make that very clear to everybody. I'm not talking about asking for more F-22s, folks. I'm just saying this mission is critical to us. It's foundation. Next slide. Since Curtis LeMay, we've been the best in the world and we remain that way. The nuclear mission, continuing to strengthen the enterprise, is still our #1 priority in the United States Air Force, and it will remain that way. In our nuclear inventory, we have 2/3 of the triad that provides nuclear deterrence to the United States of America. That's a huge responsibility. We have 36,000 airmen every day who worry about the nuclear mission, actively engaged in it each and every day. It's a big deal for us. We can't afford to ever get this wrong. Global strike will continue to be a focus area. The ability to hold targets at risk is also foundational to the United States Air Force. The Long-Range Strike Bomber program is one of our top 3 programs. It is a must-have capability. Next slide. This hasn't changed since 1947 either. The way we've done it has changed. Didn't used to talk about B-1s and B-52s and B-2s doing close air support. Those innovative airmen again. Incredible thinking, incredible innovation, incredible flexibility, incredible success. It worked well in this scenario. It might not in another one. Air support, the ground, and naval forces is foundational to the United States Air Force. It's what the President told us to do in 1947. It's still required. Next slide. I don't think anybody in 1947 could have imagined what ISR would be. The balloons didn't look like this back then. Incredible capability. Incredible capability. Our Air Force finished fielding its first 21 orbits, caps in those days, of Predators in 2006. Huge investment. Somewhere in the vicinity of $55 billion for the infrastructure, the communications architecture, the PED, the people, the training, the entire complex. The requirement's now at 65 caps, with a push to go to 85, although the secretaries hold the line. But the demand's significant. Part of the reason is because everybody wants it. If you're getting shot at, you want more. I understand that. But we're going to have to get engaged seriously in the mental process here for how we define the ISR requirement for the future. Because there isn't enough money in the universe to fund the requirement that we have in the Department of Defense. What we buy has to be thoughtfully considered. How much we can afford has to be factored in. Do you need an orbit for every squad on the ground? Maybe for some missions, certainly not for all. How do we do this differently in the future? It's time for innovation again. We innovated the heck out of the immediate problem for the last 10 or 12 years. But we've learned everything we know essentially about ISR in the active duty and Guard and Reserve Air Force over the last 20 years. There were very few people who knew anything about it in 1990. And most of the rest of the world hasn't had that focused attention on it over the last 20 years, and they're lagging us. And so do we keep running away? Do we slow down? Do we create partnerships that allow us to build capacity in other nations that we can use as parts of coalitions? Or do we just keep running on this? This is a big debate. It's a fair debate within the Department of Defense, and we're going to have to help with the COCOM's frame. They have an immediate problem. If I was them, I'd say the same thing. We organize, train, and equip for all of them. It's our job to do the thinking on this. And sure, you can help us. You got some brilliant people in this business. Next slide. There is not a bigger success story in the Air Force than mobility. Hasn't been since the Berlin airlift. We fly 60,000 airlift sorties a year. That's still close rate. 60,000. On the tanker side, this is going to sound like a strange statistic. Some of you may not have the same experience, but I've refueled a lot in my career. I have never, not one time, showed up at a tanker track and the tanker wasn't there. That's remarkable. Excellence is the way to do business in our mobility fleet. They're fantastic. They are the complete total force package. And they do so many other things, as you can see on this slide. We have Guard C-130 supporting forest fires. We've got paramedical evacuation crews bringing broken warriors home each and every day. It's an incredible success. The fleet's well resourced. We have good numbers. We have to keep it that way. We have to make sure the modernization plans, the upgrade plans are in place so we don't get some immediate short notice funding requirement to fix things, because that won't flow. We've tried that and other things. We've got to think this through. Next slide. Your operations center became a weapon system a while back. It became an effective tool for warfighters more recently. One of the issues we have to think about is, can we really fully fund our operations centers? If we can, we should. If we can't, we should have fewer of them. Having half of an air operations center, or having one that operates on a couple of cylinders, isn't really helping us. Downsizing these things is hard. There's lots of pushback from lots of places. This is another discussion we need to have. We stand for command and control. The combatant commanders expect it from us. Whether it's integrated air missile defense, it's just missile defense, or ballistic missile defense, or it's theater missile defense, they're looking to us. We got to be good at this. So we have to resource it properly. And if we have to get smaller, as the Secretary said many, many times, to be really good, then we get smaller and we're really good at what we're doing. Next slide. Okay, you have the 30th Air Force Base. It's a big event. Lots of great things have happened in the space world over the last couple of years. The fleet has gone up to help us return to the satellite constellations through a lot of hard work, a lot of consistent investment, and a lot of support from everybody from the Secretary on down. I think we've really made a huge improvement there. The launch story is a great success story right now. How many in a row now, Lee? 51 successful launches after something that was considered a fiasco at one point in time, and nobody was sure we could get our arms around it again. We can't lose sight of success like that. Lots of great people doing great work. New mission areas, domain control, space control of weapons and defense, space situational awareness. All this stuff is essential to the nation, not just to the Air Force. Everything we do in our Air Force is enabled in some way, shape, or form by some asset using space as a medium. Everything. So if you're somebody who's wearing a space badge, you don't need to defend yourself anymore. You're critical. You're the heartbeat now. It's kind of like tankers for, airborne operations. Space is it for everything else. Thank you for what you're doing, Willie, and the way you're leading. But lots of work to do here. This is another place where if you get behind the investment and modernization curve, you don't catch up. It takes you a generation to catch up. But more thought. What do we need? What sensors are required? Is there a different way to do it? Are small sets a good way to go? Are TAC sets helpful? Is operationally responsive space a valid operational concept or not? We can only study it so far before we do something. Next slide. I still twitch when I say cyber. I'm a believer. I'm just not sure we know exactly what we're doing in it yet. And until we do, I'm concerned it's a black hole. And so, and you just need to know I'm gonna be going a little slow on the operational side of cyber until I really understand what we're doing. So I'll be the one to drag it, really. I'll warn you now. But we have a lot of people in this discussion who don't really know what they're talking about. I know because they're all like me. We got to get smart about this. There are people who can help us. But please, when you come to educate us, don't come in using cyber talk. We don't get that. I haven't figured out what an IP address is yet. In 30 years, you'll have experts making these decisions. Right now, you got idiots helping to make these decisions. And so, common sense, plain English, would really help us. But we got to understand it because this is essential. This isn't. It's an airspace and cyber future. There is no doubt. And everything we do can be affected either by or through this. In either a good or a bad way. Next slide. You know, today, all over the world, we are moving people and equipment. Some into some pretty ugly spots. We're doing tactical airdrops to resupply fighters in Afghanistan, Marines and soldiers. We're doing convoys with airmen leading the way, commanding the 50 cals, driving the lead vehicle, commanding the convoy. We're flying IS armor, fighting on the battlefield side by side with our Army, Navy, and Marine brothers and sisters. We're flying spacecraft. We're downloading data. We're moving it all over the world. We're diffusing IEDs. The Air Force matters. It's important that we tell that story. We're not better than anybody else, folks, but we're just as essential. Next slide. And all that costs money. And we do it with all three components. So there it is. Next slide. You know, when I get stuck in with problems that I just don't think I know how to handle, I don't know how to deal with sequestration. How do you make all those cuts? I don't know how to solve this active duty hard thing. Why is everybody so upset about it? And why don't people talk nice? And what's going on? Why are all politics so local? When I can't figure that stuff out, I kind of go back to using common sense as the first standard I try to apply. This is an air base in Africa. It's a really cool air base. There's about 100 airmen who operate it in a deployed state. It's a neat spot. The day I went there to visit for the first time, I pulled into the white building straight ahead is kind of the local terminal that we built up to have office space on the upper floor. I remember over there behind where that crane is on the right, that big bulldozer. As I pulled in there, the guy on the airplane started talking, and they told me a story about a leopard, like that one on the bottom. They got ready to start flying stories in the morning, and they went out, and there's a leopard lying on the center line of the runway. So they went, we better go get that bad boy off the runway. So about 4 of them started walking out there. They got about halfway there and looked at each other and went, yeah, maybe we'll go get the fire truck. So 3 of them jumped in the fire truck, and they drove the fire truck out, and they pulled it right up on the center line and kind of nosed it up to the leopard, who wasn't real impressed. And they stopped just short of it, and the leopard kind of looked up and looked underneath the fire truck at the shade, and got up and walked right over the middle of the fire truck and lay down. So now they got a leopard on the center line with the fire truck on top of it. And they don't want to move the fire truck because they're afraid they'll hurt the leopard. And so they get on the fire truck, and the 3 of them standing there inside the fire truck looking at the leopard, who's way in there, 10 feet, like a cute kitty, I guess. And they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And they've got these long poles on the side of the fire truck, as it so happens. So one of them took the pole down, and they started poking the kitty. And the leopard was on his back, swatting at the pole, until he finally rolled over and gave him the kitty's not happy anymore sound. And they dropped the pole, they jumped up on the side of the fire truck. So now there's 3 of them, 3 feet off the ground on the side of a fire truck, with a full-grown leopard underneath it. They looked at each other after about 30 seconds and went, okay, plan C. So they drop and they run back in the cab of the fire truck. But and C's a good one. Well, tranquilize it. So they get on the radio and they call into the med tech and they say, hey, fix up a tranquilizer. I'm on it. I don't know if that med tech's ever done a tranquilizer for a leopard before, but he was getting it done. And then they went looking for a tranquilizer gun, but nobody inside could find one. And the guys in the truck were scared to get out of the truck to walk in because they thought the leopard might get them all the way back in. So finally, they found not a tranquilizer gun, but they found a big syringe, one of those big plastic ones, you know, with the big needles on it. Now all they needed was a volunteer. And they found one. Amazingly enough, the youngest airman volunteered. And he came walking out to the fire truck, you know, with his syringe, ready for action. And that's when the chief showed up and went, what are you doing? Now, these are really, really great airmen. They're really talented, they're really smart, but every now and then, common sense takes a vacation with all of us. It certainly did this day. And we got to be careful about common sense taking a vacation with us as we get to these type of times. One of the things that tends to happen to us a lot is we hurry through decisions because there's so much going on, and we forget to think about how is this decision going to affect every airman, not just my functional area. How is it going to affect our squadrons? Because I'm here to tell you folks, you can break every staff in the Air Force, and we'll survive. You break the squadron, we might as well go home. We got to make sure we keep that in the back of our mind. We've gotten rid of most of our customer service people in the Air Force. You know what's frustrating our airmen more than anything else? How do they get any questions answered on their travel problems, their travel voucher, their military pay that isn't working right, their assignment when they go through all the voicemails? It's frustrating the heck out of them. Those of you who are still serving, who know that. It's nobody's fault, but we got to start thinking about this. How do we do this in a way that doesn't drive them crazy? We're already working them to death. We got them out there wrestling leopards in Africa. Common sense is a big deal right now. Next slide. So my view is we go back to basics.